do we have a similar analogy in things that, where's human oversight of agents going to be still required, in the medium and long term?
That's a good question. I mean, I can answer for me. I'm not going to let an agent autonomously take actions that are impactful to me without a lot more verification, right? I don't know if my bank is going to start pushing an agent on me, but I'm probably going to be very careful how I use that. And I think it just comes down to the risks, right, of using an agent in sort of a high value scenario. They're still quite high. To your point, driving a 1-ton chunk of metal down a street at 30 miles an hour is a risky endeavor. And it took years, right, for us to gain that trust. We're there. I don't know if you've been to San Francisco or these other cities and taken like a Waymo. It's clearly better.
Yeah.
I think it's that codec experience. It's that Claude Code experience. You start using it, you're like, oh yeah, no, this is good. Yeah, I think that one of the key things that I'm looking for in those is with Claude Code, right? Probably the agent that I use the most, to be blunt. I get this feeling that it understands what I'm asking. And this is both, it's got a pretty smart model. It's also the UX, the entire package is structured to help me have trust, right? It builds a little checklist. So I can look at the checklist and be like, yeah, okay, that checklist makes sense. It tracks what I want. And when it starts writing code, it gives me the option to look at the code and say, yes, accept, right? Those are product decisions. They're not necessarily just model decisions, but they build the overall experience that builds trust. A Waymo, the coolest part about a Waymo, also a Tesla, is that screen, right? Where you can see what it sees, like every car and pedestrian and traffic cone. And you're like, okay, it is observing the world in a way that makes me trust that it knows what's going to happen. And again, this is context. I can see that it has acquired the context necessary to do the question or to do in this case, the problem.
Yeah.
In Copilot Studio as a product, this is also something we think about quite a bit.
Well, you've got an example here, I think. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah. So Monday.com is sort of this sort of job management or task management software. They have an MCP server that is actually, you can load this thing directly into Copilot Studio. My team is the research team that is building our next version of models. So we go and we post-train or we fine-tune models. And to do this, we build these huge corpuses of tasks on these MCP servers, right? So go and do things, right? And here's a very sort of easy task, right? Create a new subtask under the payment systems integration task called test payment flows and show me all items in the parent. Oh, and then I forgot to say, but also assign it to Mike. Humans talk this way, right? They just like throw in a non sequitur and you're like, you're supposed to know that I'm talking about the subtask, right? I don't know how many exactly tasks this is. When I ran it through our research model, it got the right answer. And I showed you here, there were sort of 4 tool calls. Get board items, so like what's there now, list the users and teams. I got to find out who is Mike, right? Get a schema, like what is this board? And then finally create an item. In reality, there were probably 15 calls. Some of them were wrong. The model has to sort of figure that out. But the scary math, right? The thing that keeps me up at night is in the lower left here. Let's say that we've got 4 calls and that every call succeeds 99% of it. If all of them need to succeed, that only happens 96% of the time. If we go down to the bottom, let's say each tool only fails 1 time in 20, right? And that sounds like, that's pretty good. But if any one tool fails, right, in this layout, then the system, the overall experience is broken. And that is going to happen 1 time in 5, right? So that pernicious math, right? That combinatorial math, for these multi-tool call scenarios, this is what really makes me nervous. How do we instill trust in something where everything has to go right in the entire sort of progression of a task?
So given that it was sort of that cumulative success rate or cumulative failure rate, can result in ultimately in this case, a 1 out of 5 failure was probably too high, to be useful. Where do you see the top challenges in improving the success rates on those? As you break down the sequence of tasks, improving the success rate of task completion.
If you break it down, it's going to get worse, right? If you've got 10 things, each of which fails 1% of the time, it's worse. I think we just have to plan for a defensive agent. Plan for agents that will do the wrong thing, that will make the wrong decisions. How do they recover? Probably the most important feature in Claude Code is undo. I trust that I
Yeah.
can be like, no, 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 whatever you just did, I don't want it, and it can undo it, right? In our world, obviously, it can be hard to undo a bank transfer, and so maybe there you, probably you're not using MCS yet to control your bank, but you could in that case, ask the user every time you're moving money or doing a very high value transaction. Another side of this is the MCP tools that we build, right? Make them a little defensive. If they get inputs that don't make sense, don't try, right? Just be like, nope, you sort of have almost failed the checksum. You've got 3 parameters, and those 3 parameters taken together make no sense. And so we don't believe that the caller really knows what they're doing, and you bail. So it's defense in depth. I'm a model builder, and so on my side, we think a lot about introspecting. This is the tool I'm going to call.
Yeah.
How do I know it's right? Can I reason over, like, is this right? Before the model says, yep.
I think you have another example here that maybe illustrates that concept.
Yeah. So, we're in this sort of same example, create a new subtask under this payment systems integration task, assign it to Mike. Just think about the number of ways this can go wrong, right? There's no boards. There's 2 boards, right? That have the same name or that are sort of ambiguous to this question. There's 2 mics. There's 2 mics, but I don't ever work with one of those 2 mics. Microsoft's a big place. So can the model be smart enough to say he probably means that guy Mike that is in his org? There's sort of this just like explosion of ways things can go wrong.